we'll have this discussion.
Discussion? What discussion?
This is a discussion combustion.
Coming to you from Denver, Colorado, this is Discussion Combustion Podcast with your hosts, Kevin Batstone and Arthur Raw.
Aimee got to experience a little bit of the DCPC gone shooting over there at the Shootist. What do you think about that?
I didn't really know what to expect, to be honest. I had really no idea what I was getting into. I didn't expect it to be such, an adrenaline rush. It was really scary. The AR-15 is what really got me, clearly, as
yeah, but then you were like, I need to shoot it again.
And then I was like,
can I shoot that one more time?
I'm not done. I'm not finished.
You sent a good 50, 60 rounds through that thing.
50?
Oh, easy.
Yeah.
I mean, you cleared a 40-round mag, and then we loaded another one. So you got to experience the AR's power.
Pricey.
We do have a video that's going to drop later this week, DCPC Gone Shooting Volume 3 with Aimee. That's going to be fun. So looking forward to that. But what a great way to kick off this podcast.
Oh, yeah. I know. Yeah. Talk about waking you up.
Big shout out to the Shootist. You know you're my favorite range in the Denver metropolitan area. I love what you guys do over there. You take care of us, and much respect. And so much appreciation. And it's fun, though. But guns are to be respected, and it's definitely something that, can be very intimidating, and no matter how much experience you have with a firearm, you always need to respect that weapon. You always need to act like it's loaded, and you should have like a healthy fear of it, right? Because it's not a toy, and never was, never is.
And that's why we go to the range, hone in your skills, get familiar with the weapon, right? A lot of folks just think, I'm scared of it, never want to touch it. It's good to get out there. I know you said your husband's a police officer.
Yeah, my husband's a police officer. We actually just went this weekend for his 30th birthday, the big 3-0.
Oh, congrats.
To this new restaurant bar shooting range in Lakewood. And that was kind of cool. Well, he's a police officer, so there's weapons in our house, so I have to get a little more comfortable using them. But it was, it wasn't intimidating. Some shooting ranges, as a woman, you go, and it's really intimidating, and it was kind of a nice social fun experience, actually.
That's cool. Yeah. I heard that place was opening, but I haven't heard any reviews or live action reports from it, so that's cool. Good to know.
Is there like a 2-drink limit or something?
Well, so you have to shoot first.
Then you drink.
Okay.
And then you can go drink, and they make you lock up your firearms while you're drinking, and then someone will escort the firearms to your car when you're done. So it's pretty safe the way they do it.
That's good, because there could be a lot of liability with letting people do drinking and then go back to the range.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Well, it's good to have that sort of understanding. Like if shit ever hits the fan and you need to use a pistol or anything, it's something to be good with. But this is not what this whole episode is about. We can obviously talk about guns and all that for quite some time.
We do enough of that.
But really exciting. This is a unique episode for Discussion Combustion. There is a lot of momentum happening in this room right now. So Aimee Lewis, sitting across the table, has recorded a couple different podcasts with our production company, and recently got picked up by Westword.
Yes.
And they wrote 2 articles.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's super exciting news. So congratulations on that.
Thank you.
Also putting it out there and telling your story. And that's how, Alli, you kind of ended up in this room because of Aimee's story, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I saw the Westword article, and it spoke to me, and so I Instagram messaged Aimee, and I was like, good for you. Big kudos for saying your truth and sharing your story. So I applaud you, and there's a lot of people in the news world that have those feelings. They just don't talk about it. So
the response that I got after Westword did publish Live at 5 was, it was more than I ever expected. Reporters, anchors, producers, and photographers from across the country reached out to me, saying, exactly what you did, Alli, just, thanking me for talking about it and having that courage and being so bold to talk about it. And, I even got a photographer from CNN. I think that was the biggest one that really took me back, saying, kudos for speaking. But I think the local news industry is... there's a lot of hush-hush around it, mostly because of contracts, I would say. People don't, openly talk about their experiences or what it was like for them working in the business. So I think that's why it stood out, is because I think plenty of reporters have talked about it on TikTok and Instagram, or, maybe opened up on Facebook about why they're no longer in the business. But I don't think a lot of reporters, at least I haven't found someone make a polished production about their exit of the industry.
Well,
And I think that's why I stuck out.
One of the, and to add to that, I think the authenticity of it, the way that you told the story, I mean, it was great being on this side of the production table and hearing it and then producing it and having some fun hearing the story. But I think what resonated with the listeners was the authenticity piece of it. Here's a reporter that has gone through, been there, done that. Here's what it's like. You're shedding some light on something that a lot of folks probably don't realize that happens in mainstream news.
Yeah.
And everybody watches it every day, right? A majority of people do.
Exactly. And people, kids, they grow up watching the news. From a young age, they expect, a reporter and an anchor to act a certain way and to talk a certain way and to love their job. And they don't really hear the opposite side of it. People just don't talk about it. And that's why I was so excited to put it out there. But Live at 5, it originally started as... It was supposed to be a book. I thought it'd be really interesting to write a book, we go through so much in the news industry, and I'm going to write a book, and coming home every day after having some really tough assignments, and I would write it out. And then I realized I don't think people would really read a book. I think people would be more willing to sit down and listen to a podcast when they're driving or, working in the lawn. So that was how it all, put together. Mm-hmm. And that's why it was so organic, because it was me just coming home and putting it out there for a way for me to kind of heal from what was going on. And that's why it was so organic and just like the diary of Aimee.
Well, and you mentioned, people don't talk about it. And
Yeah.
as someone who is in the business and in the news world, you don't talk about it because there's this expectation that this is the typical grind.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is what you signed up for. This is, it's that mentality of, well, I chose this. So how can I
100%.
feel that way and speak out like that? Because this was my career path. I'd put this on myself, but hearing someone have those same emotions, you're like, well, there could be another way around this,
Yeah.
It's just the way that news has kind of come about and come to be over the last 6 to 10 years, I would say, has really, it's changed the game for employees and journalists.
Well, and so the listeners know, you also, Alli, you also have background in news.
I do.
We're not going to mention anything as far as that goes, but this is a unique opportunity. We have two people that have both been in that industry before, sitting across the table. So I'm excited for that right now. But it's interesting because, Aimee, when you were the Live at 5, not Bluebird Days, but talking about how it's kind of like this grind, this machine where you need to put something out there even if there's nothing to put out there. You have to create this intrigue and suck people in even if it's like a story about nothing. And you're not really doing something that really fulfills where your passion is or a story that you truly want to share. Because it's about the drama, like you mentioned Squid Games and stuff, and how because it's interesting life. We're living right now, and there's all these horrible, horrific things that can happen. Thank God it's not happening to us. Is how the brain works.
Totally.
But that's part of what the news uses to suck in an audience.
Yes. Yeah. I think I said it's human nature to be captivated by human suffering. I was scrolling through Netflix. I don't know if you subscribe, but the number 2 trending show right now, do you know? Are you on Netflix? It's this new show, and it's called I Survived a Crime. And it's essentially, an ABC reporter anchors it. But it's basically just crime story after crime story after crime. And people eat it up. It's, an hour long, just back-to-back A-block crime story about just people across the country, carjackings, people shooting home intruders, and the fact that it's the number 2 show on Netflix right now, people can say that, the news is, terrible. Why don't you report on something happy? And people don't want it. People love to see people, suffer, and that's just the truth.
There's so much evidence to support it, too. I mean, people love to watch other people's lives go in the toilet.
Yeah.
And I feel like mainstream media does a good job at highlighting a lot of that, putting the fear out there, putting the, just highlighting all the negativity. We see this often. So I'm sure from a reporting standpoint, a journalist standpoint, it can be kind of difficult.
It just, after a while, it really starts to break you. And I think, the hardest days were when there was a story that you think would bring a lot of light into people's day, a really happy feature story. But they didn't want that. They wanted me to dive into a crime story that you really ask yourself, do we need to broadcast this?
Yeah.
Do we really need to
Yeah,
put
they
this
call
on?
it the lead. We'd sit around in an editorial meeting every day and someone would, pitch this great story about this, grandmother helping veterans and let's go profile her. Well, what's going to lead the newscast? And then they'd skip over and keep revolving around the table and see who's going to drop a great leadable story of a newscast.
Yes, that's so true. Yeah.
So you just were skipped over, and it's hard to watch. And when you talk about it weighs on you. Before I became a news manager, which was my last role in the business, I was a reporter. And I think you said in one of your podcasts, it's hard to go up to the mother who just lost a child or the wife who just lost a husband and say, can you talk about that? And I remember my first few months as a news reporter right out of college, I went to this car accident and someone was hit by a drunk driver and killed this little boy. And my boss calls me and goes, I found the address to his mom's house.
Yeah.
Can you go knock on their door? Excuse
That's
me?
like
And
that's
so,
dicey.
for
Yeah.
me as a
It's
young
nice.
journalist, a young reporter, sure, I'll do that. I'm going to, whatever the bosses say, I'm going to do it. And so I did it. And she ended up interviewing me, but
Wow.
man, I'm still to this day, I still have her face in my head. Like,
Yeah.
that just doesn't go away. And then it builds off that. So as your career goes on, you meet more people and more people and more people. And it's just, it's
Yeah.
horrifying because you're like, what if this was my family? And I remember this. I had a boss in one of my old news markets. She said her father died in a helicopter crash. She says, I will never forget how the news reported on his death. And when she told me that, from that day forward, I always asked myself, yeah, is it worth it?
So
Why
true.
do we need to share that story? It's going to haunt these people for the rest of their life, how the news covers their loved one's death. But
Yeah.
we are basically told this is what you have to do or else. So that's the hard position of being a human versus being a journalist, and this is your job.
Yeah.
It kind of backs you in a corner a little bit because now you have to. This is your job. This is your assignment. You have to go knock on a door and put a microphone in someone's face and start asking the questions. So as a reporter, you're still trying to do your job, right? And you want to execute it well, but you also have sympathy for them. I'm sure when the camera and the mics go off, you have intimate moments with these individuals. I'm sorry, all that stuff. A lot of that stuff probably doesn't get captured on camera because you're playing that reporter role, so to speak, and trying to capture the story that you were assigned to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if this ever happened to you, Aimee, but there were nights when I was, we'd be in, we call it wall-to-wall coverage. So if there's a really big breaking news event, God forbid a school shooting or a police officer killed or something, you go on the air and you don't stop for hours. No commercial break, nothing. And you're just going back and forth to live reporters, back to your anchors, you're hitting helicopter visuals.
And they call that a
They call it
wall-to-wall?
wall-to-wall coverage, meaning
Okay.
you don't stop as things kind of unfold. And I remember going home after those and just crying because you were consumed in it for 6 hours. And at that time I was a producer, so I was in the control room, and you just for 6 hours you see every reporter, who they talk to, what crying mother. You get all the information from police, what are they telling us, and it's just, it doesn't stop. It's wall to wall, and I used to go home and just cry.
Yeah.
It weighs on your mental health.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And you can't
So,
break down there. So.
Is there any statistics on mental health of news reporters, like as they've grown older, and like how does that affect people long term? Because being around negativity constantly, like you have to find an equilibrium of sorts. Like if you're dealing with that level of disparity, then you're gonna have to find a way to like see some life and some light.
Yeah.
So like I don't know how would both of you cope? Aimee, you could go first.
Yeah.
How would you cope with that?
The first thing that popped into my mind when you said that is, you almost become addicted to like the chaos and this, not so much suffering, but you really become it, like something changes in your brain. I remember I was on a date and we were watching a football game, and he just ordered like a spread of wings, and outside the window I started, ambulance, fire truck, police. And I remember he was, I wonder what's going on. And I jumped up, ran to the window. I said, I'll be right back. Ran downstairs, started taking footage of what was going on. It was like I was addicted to it. And that's when I really realized that I don't think I am, like, coping with what's going on. It's like I've, like, trained my brain to think that that's, like, okay. Or, like, that's just, like, what you need to do is cover the bad, and I really couldn't shut it off. So I don't know if I was really coping with it. I think I was just kind of always
just
drawn
in the mix.
to it.
Yeah.
And I would go to happy hours. I would go live at 5, and then I'd go to happy hour with my friends at 6, and I would feel myself just sitting there, and everyone around would be laughing about their day and what happened to them, and I physically couldn't, because I was just so wrapped up in what I did that day.
Yeah.
And by the end of the day, when I would go to bed, I think I could, really relax, watch some shows, but I think I was constantly in a state of just high stress, so there wasn't really much decompression time. Maybe after I quit the news is when I got to calm down, but
Well,
yeah.
I agree. You said two things. It's the same for, there is no off switch.
No.
You're always on, and you're always, your brain, you just train your brain to always react. And it is like a sick addiction in a way.
It is, yeah.
It's, I always joked and called it a love-hate relationship. I loved my job, but I hated what I did.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
it's just hard to, but some people can compartmentalize that a little bit better than others. For me, it was like when you're in the moment, you're in the moment. You're not actually really thinking about what's happening. You're thinking about the job. Who do I need to talk to? What do I need to get? What's my deadline? Who's editing this? Who do I need to call? Like 20 things are on your mind, but you're not actually thinking, oh, I'm reporting on this tragedy.
There's a dead body
Yeah,
right there.
and so you're, when a journalist shows up to a scene, a tragedy of some sort, you're not really thinking about what actually happened and that these are people, which is so bad to say, but you don't actually see this as a family mourning or someone who just lost their life. You see it as, I have this deadline, I need to call this producer, I need to make sure this is in, I need, who's editing this, where's the camera, where's the mic?
Yeah, where's the time to mentally digest?
You don't.
Yeah.
You don't get that time.
I think I would personally be like laying in bed at night, just not falling asleep.
Yeah, most likely.
Oh, you're already thinking about what you're going to cover tomorrow.
Oh, so
Yeah.
there's no time. Okay, I see.
Yeah.
I worked a shift where I didn't get off work till 11 p.m. I saw 3, 4 in the morning. You just don't, get off work and just, try to zen. It takes hours to just decompress, even if the day didn't involve a tragedy. If you just had a day that you were covering kind of some bland news, you're still at 100% and uptight and wound up, and you're like, how am I going to decompress?
Yeah.
And that's why there's probably a lot of alcohol abuse and things of that nature in that industry. I remember asking you this, Amy. I don't know if you've seen it since, but the morning show on Apple TV with Jennifer Aniston and
Never watched it. I'm
Reese
slacking. I'm
Witherspoon?
sorry.
Yeah, so that was like one of the first times, because the viewers know I always wanted to be a meteorologist. That was my dream as a kid. I wanted to be in front of the green screen, given the weather. I always had that dream, right? So then I watched the morning show, which kind of gave me a perspective. I mean, it's a show. Jennifer Aniston plays an anchor, of course, but it kind of gave me a different perspective on like some of the stuff you guys are talking about. From the production room, seeing the camera angles come in, trying to get everything dialed in right, and then when they go off air, it's like, well, that wasn't good enough, and you got to critique this, and it kind of takes that authenticity piece away that we're talking about a little bit that we capture in podcasting. But there's a lot that goes on behind the scenes when the cameras and the lights go off. I feel like that folks are just like, I'll just tune in tomorrow again at 5 p.m. get my evening news, right? I mean, they're programmed to it, I think.
For the record, Kevin, I think you would have made a great meteorologist.
Thank you.
Truly.
I agree. And you have the voice for it, too.
Thank you. That's a very nice compliment.
Yeah.
So,
I love that you got that compliment.
I am the chief meteorologist of Discussion Combustion. That's all I need.
He is, and actually fairly accurate, too, because we report several days after the weather has already happened. So
that's true. When it comes out, it already happened. So you can't mess up too much there. But
Accurate,
that's right. Kylie Bruce will hold me accountable.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
But that's another story. So, Alli, you were an EP for a local station. We obviously won't mention who. And I think you touched on some of the things that you had to deal with over there, calling the shots, getting everything dialed in, who's editing it, where's it going. We touched on some of the bad times. What was one of the highlights, do you feel like, of that
Good
portion?
question,
Yeah, I think the best part of that job is there are times where you can use the power of your voice to do something good. to do something positive, to stand up for the little guy. You know, we used to get calls all the time from people who were scammed by whether it's a contractor or, you know, someone claiming to be Excel Energy was going to turn off their power and they paid them the rest of their life savings. And it's just horrible. And they can call a bank, but when someone from a newsroom gets involved and you call a company saying, hi, we're going to blast you on TV, pretty much, unless we don't say it that way. But, you know, it's like people are scared of the media because it portrays them in a bad light if their company or their brand goes on television saying they did this. And so there were a lot of times where we were able to help those people. And I think that was the main point of getting into journalism in the first place was, for me, it was everyone has a story, and it's being able to tell those stories to connect people. And you never know who's going to watch and say, oh, I want that or I need that, whether it's a medical procedure or it's something in the community or city council discussion or, you know, informing them so they can make decisions about how it's going to impact their life and what to do with their families. So that was the point of getting in journalism in the first place. And there were some highlights. Yeah. It's just changed, I think, significantly.
That did always feel good, though. When you really, really helped someone and you could see it, you know? We had the, Fox 31 problem solvers, and I did a story once about a young man who had his truck stolen with thousands of dollars of construction equipment in the back, and did a story on it, and 2 weeks later, a viewer bought him a new truck, and a construction company bought him all new gear.
That's terrific. Wow.
And it was because of my story.
That's terrific.
You know? Like that's
what you do it for. It makes you feel good, right? Take the good with the bad, of course. The bad, unfortunately, outweighs the good.
Yes.
In that industry.
In this industry, yeah, definitely does.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's so interesting. I mean, because a lot of these things that we're talking about don't only just apply to news. Like even whatever your day job is. Like one job I completely lost my soul from, and I don't know if I've ever gotten it back. A piece of it, I got a big soul. Okay, but I was selling Dish Network in an inbound call center, and the things I would do once I ran someone's credit, because I would like be hitting it, and I would get credit ran within like 5 minutes. And so once that happened, people would get their price, and I'll tell them what they qualify for, and then they would be like, okay, well, let me think about it. And I'll be like, well, in fact, I'm the only person that has your credit ran. It's at my computer. So if you call back in, you have to run it again. And they're like, well, I don't want to do that. And then so I literally, this was one of the more extreme times, but I had this dude who, he was like, I don't have any money on my card. I don't have a credit card or anything like it was one of those situations. And I'm like, well, do you have any cash that you could like do a deposit for? And that way we could get you the cheapest package. And he's like, I do. And so I was like, all right, so what I need you to do is go to the bank with me on the line and deposit that. And he didn't have a car. So then he rode his bike with me on the line on hold to go deposit $20 so I could get him like the Flex TV cheapest possible package just to get a sale. And then from there, he would have to call back and upgrade to the correct package. So I sold him something he didn't want. And I like forced and like, and I'll do this to grandmas and like, will give me a card that works. That's your name on the card, correct? And it's just like, when you do that kind of work and that you're sacrificing like your morality, then it takes a piece of you. Yeah. And so like what we're talking about here is pretty deep because, both of you across the table from us, a lot of people look at those type of positions like, you're in the limelight, you're in the camera, the public's eyes, so you must love it. It's powerful, isn't it? But then there's that misconception because deep down, you might be breaking your morality to publish that story or not send the right message. Yeah. And that can happen in a lot of different industries.
Yeah. I think like exactly that. And the follow-up article to Westward's, their original one was basically just asking people, do they actually watch news anymore? And being out on the street, I'm sure you experienced this as well as a reporter in Montana, but people hated me. People hated me because I was the media and I was the news and I was advertising, the worst of humanity. And that was just, that's what really would keep me up at night is not. And the comments were obviously terrible too. You couldn't catch a break from those too. But just knowing that I would interview someone and they just really wanted nothing to do with me, and I don't blame them in a way. I really don't, And I would like to know ultimately, like, are people still tuning in to local news? I don't know. I think national news is doing all right, but local, I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard because as a news manager, we track ratings, and ratings come through television. And, the way newsrooms and news stations make money is they sell advertising, but they use their ratings to be able to price those advertising slots. But that's television. I mean, so many people have cut the cord and they don't watch TV, let alone local news on TV.
They get all on Twitter.
Every social
Exactly.
media, streaming services. So, newsrooms are still focused on TV ratings when the general public has shifted to social media, digital streaming services to get their information.
Exactly.
It remains competitive, of course. And now, how are the ratings measured? I mean, obviously, since we've gone digital, it's probably a little bit easier to track. If someone clicks on Fox 31 or, ABC, whatever, that's a rating, right? That's how they can track it. But how was it tracked before we had the digital market?
So in television, it's tracked through Nielsen ratings. And this is also a little bit of a skewed system. But the way they do it is there are a certain number of Nielsen boxes that are in people's homes. Those people also know that they have a Nielsen box in their home.
I've never heard of a Nielsen box.
That's what we were just talking about with the market 210 to number 1. It's Nielsen that determines that. But continue.
Based on how many people tune in.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, it's based on kind of population size and what your numbers are. But
So is the Nielsen box like attached to like the antenna? Or
yeah, it's
something?
attached to your
Like
TV, and it'll monitor what stations you watch throughout the
Okay.
day per hour, so we can get like hour by hour. So like, she worked at a competitor station to me, and so from the night before, in the morning we'd get on the computer and we'd pull up the ratings and we could look what did their newscast do versus our newscast at the same exact time slot and look at the numbers across all the networks. So that's how they do it. But again, that's based off television and people aren't really watching. And so, you're grabbing for straws that don't even exist anymore, but you still have to, be perfect.
Still got to feed the beast.
Yeah.
And so now we take the box ratings that we have attached, right? And then let's say somebody subscribes to Fubo or Sling or one of these things and still pulls in the local channels. How does that factor in? Does that data separate?
Separate data.
When you review the ratings?
So TV ratings are totally separate from
Stream.
and subscription based.
So there's a big focus on the TV side, whereas the stream side not so much. Is that what you're saying?
I think it's shifted a lot in the past few years where, in the past I'd say 5 or 6 years, it's shifted to streaming.
Okay.
A lot of which is, the struggle for TV news people is they've shifted dollars and resources and reallocated that to the digital side of thing, which is what they should be doing. But TV, I mean, they would cut staff in half, but you still have the same hours of news to fill with half the people now that have gone on to the digital side or streaming side of things. Yeah. So that puts a strain on your TV people, but you're still basing your revenue off TV ratings. So that's where it's a little funky.
That's where it gets dicey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's competition at the end of the day. How can we outperform the guy that has a little bit more ratings, right? And that's where it can get kind of rough. I know you touched on a little bit in the podcast about a slow news day is a tough day because you got to try to find something to talk about. Try to create a story that's going to be 5 o'clock worthy.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. And that I remember there was nothing to talk about on the news, and the only story was that it was Valentine's Day and freezing cold. It was, I don't know if you remember that day, but I think it was 2 winters ago, rather. And it was one of the coldest days of the year. And my assignment, because there was no news, was to go out and figure, and just ask people, what do you think about the cold?
Okay.
That was the story.
I mean,
What do you think about the cold? And guess what they said?
it sucks.
they're cold.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're
And
cold.
then, like, well, how do
Breaking news.
Breaking news.
This is a Fox News alert.
Yeah.
Local news market, and your story was, go ask people how cold they are. It's, it's one of those days where you're like, what am I doing? And you're freezing, and you're
The
trying
whole
to press the
time.
buttons on your camera, and I ended up interviewing, it was COVID, so the sushi restaurant was making people sit outside. So there was this couple sitting outside in like negative degrees
Eating
their
sushi?
sushi, which was honestly hilarious. And it kind of worked out. But people ate it up. But yeah, they were drinking tea in the freezing cold. But yeah,
Really?
you can't not have a story. You always have to have a story. Even if it's making something out of absolutely nothing. You can't just be like, there's not a story today. No, I'm just going to go home. Yeah, you can't. So.
Is that kind of, Trump made the term fake news famous. Is there any truth behind that?
Whew, but you really opened up a new can of worms.
I know, I'm
there.
coming at
Yes,
you with some
you really
the hot
are.
seat questions here. Because, like you said, news is news. We're reporting
Yeah.
on what's happening. But far from what Trump said about fake news, because the fake news is what he reported against him, of course. But is there some truth to that? Like the cold night. That's not necessarily fake news. It's cold. You're going out interviewing people. But is there some manipulation out there in the market to try to still put some news together?
We would never purposely put something on air that we said, this is fake, but we just need to put something on, even if it's not real. I think the problem is, what I just said is making something out of nothing, but also just really stretching something that's not that dramatic, but making it more dramatic,
Than it needs
really
to be.
dressing it up to capture the viewer's attention. If our A block, which is the first 9 minutes of news before commercial, doesn't have something that's really going to make viewers want to stay for the B block, you kind of makes it just a little bit crazier. So it's the making something just more dramatic. That's my thought on that. But
Yeah, it's not like people are scheming behind the scenes. What can we come up with, or what can we, fluff up and pretend? Like, it's all real stuff. Here's where the problem is. Because of so much, budgets have been slashed significantly, you're hiring younger talent, greener reporters, people who don't have a lot of experience, who have never maybe lived in Colorado and are showing up to report on Colorado news.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they're 2 weeks into living in the state, and they're on the lead story at 5 or 6 o'clock
That's so
because they're younger, they can get paid a lot less. And so it's pushed out a lot of good journalists. And when I say good journalists, I mean just being able to critical think, ask the right
Yeah.
questions, understand a complex story.
Yeah.
And so I think what the problem is now is it comes down to budget, is who can we staff? And it's the people that you're staffing that may not have as much experience or may not totally comprehend a story, so they leave parts out, not purposefully, just because they don't know. And so I think that's where but it's not like anything you put on TV is fake. Of course there's errors, like you put the wrong date on an event and it's like it's Sunday, not Saturday, and we aired it on that it was coming up on Saturday, or
Human error.
those happen all the time. But that's also just because producers, reporters, everyone's going a million miles a second, and that's expected because
Mistakes are
you're
gonna
on.
happen.
Yeah, so that's where you may think.
And then the competitor's so quick to slam it, right? Oh, look, Fox 31 fucked up. They got this wrong over here. This is the wrong date. They're fake news.
Yeah.
That's where it goes, right?
Well, another news network wouldn't say, oh, they're fake news, because every reporter, anchor, producer tries to stay away from the term. But yeah, that is so true. It's a rushed operation now, and you do have people that are jumping from market 150 to market 30, which used to be unheard of, but now that's a pretty common practice. You would have to be a reporter for over a decade to get into a top 20 market. It took me 5 years, which was fast. I felt like I was ready, but I think some other station, and they were a top 10 market, and they brought in someone from 130, and that's that's where the problems are, because it takes a while to be a seasoned reporter, to understand how to do your research, how to make connections, how to pronounce names of towns. And when they're put into a market that they're not ready for, they will make mistakes. They will. And that looks like fake news to the viewers that have been there. You know, oh, you're going to say Arvada, not Arvada, you know, like just little things like that.
So it's
you lose.
Arvada? Because I've lived here my whole life.
Yeah, how
What
do you...
about Buena Vista, Buena Vista?
yeah.
I got slapped on the wrist with a guest that we had a couple weeks ago, Ryan Chris.
Yeah.
Because I said
Right.
I said Buena Vista, and he said, hey, put your hand out, and he whacked me. I said, it's Buena Vista. And so I learned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've been in Colorado for 15 years now, and I still can't get it right. I'm a New Englander at heart. So
Galapago, Galapagos.
No, I said Arvada on air, and I had a producer in my ear, Amy, it's Arvada. I'm like, Arvada Police Department. Yeah. Sorry.
people get pretty upset here in Colorado if you pronounce their towns wrong. That's what I've noticed.
Yeah.
Because up in New England, our towns are very hard to pronounce, and a lot of people mess them up. We're just like, you know,
What's
have a beer.
one of the hardest ones?
Leominster.
Leominster.
Yep.
Leominster.
Yeah.
Worcester.
Worcester.
A lot of people want to call it Worcester. It's Worcester.
Yeah. Worcester.
Oh.
I know I
So-
said Landkisser wrong the first time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did I say it right that time?
No.
Absolutely not.
A for effort.
We'll get you there.
Yeah, no, it's all good. No, but see, it's like it's funny when people are critical about things like that. Like, why let a mispronunciation of a town upset you? Like, it's like
Because
why?
it's their town. How
I
dare
mean,
you
that makes
disrespect
sense.
it?
People are obviously passionate about where they're from. They want their town pronounced right. But at the
Yeah.
same token, you know, human error, potato, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. But in professional news, obviously, you got to be buttoned up. I get it. There's an expectation there where people tune in. They don't want to see Arthur and I drinking beers and mispronouncing towns.
Dude, I guarantee you we get ratings on the Nelson box.
Nielsen.
Yeah.
Again, A for effort.
See, this is my point.
Damn it.
Yeah, it's that's what's cool about podcasting versus news is there's a lot more freedom over here. You
Yes,
don't have to be
there
quite
is.
as buttoned up. I mean, the amount of shit we've gotten wrong on this program, you know, we're not a fake podcast, so I guess that's good.
We have a lot of opinions, but not a lot of facts.
That's true.
Yes.
That's the
You know,
difference.
at least you're transparent about it.
Yeah.
This is good though. I'm learning a lot.
Tune in at your own risk.
Yeah.
Tune in at your own risk. Well, I mean, and that's, you know, I could go off on that with the Joe Rogan situation. I mean, a lot of people tried to cancel him after having some doctors and different personnel in his program. You know, because Joe Rogan is now outperforming Fox News and CNN and MSNBC. I mean,
sure he
he's
is.
getting 11 million downloads versus 2.5. I think Fox gets something like that. And so these guys are now targeting Joe. Why not? He's the top dog. He's pulling viewers away from potential mainstream news.
Yeah.
The market's changing. Like you said, you don't know how many people are watching local news anymore. People are getting their information faster and from different places.
Yeah.
And generally speaking, I feel like the attention span, people don't want to sit down for the 30 to an hour broadcast anymore. They can do all that in 20 seconds. Let me just scroll through Twitter, get my headlines, right?
Absolutely.
It's different. And so my question is, where do you think local news is going to be in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, the future of
Great
news.
question. Great question.
Alli, you take this one.
Yeah.
I think TV's going out the door.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
You know, look at newspapers, all right? It took newspapers. There are still some local papers that are alive and well.
And people love them.
And, you know, there are dedicated newspaper readers. There are always going to be dedicated TV news viewers. But there are going to be a lot fewer in the next few years. And I think right now, you know, you look at a lot of the big networks have launched, you know, 24/7 streaming services. So, you know, CBS News and ABC News, and they've all launched their, you know, streaming apps where you can watch news whenever you want.
There's too many
you know?
apps.
Right. And so some of the local stations have picked up and you know, fed off that as well. But I could tell you that I really do think, which is really sad because TV news was my dream. And, you know, it's a hard business, but it has its rewarding days. And so to see what it's become and what's ahead is really, it's scary.
It is. It's sad.
I agree.
It's sad. It really is.
So, like 10 years from now, do you think there's still going to be reporters out there?
I think what confuses me, and I honestly don't have the answers to it, and, you know, you were in a very different role than I was, Alli, so maybe you can bring some insight for me, but I have noticed every single station that I have worked for is almost doing the opposite of what I would think, and they are adding more shows. You know, now we have the 4, the 5, the 6, the 7, the 9, the 9:30, and the 10. And in my time at every station I've been at, they've added more shows. And it's confusing to me. I mean, I have a theory I talked about, which is more ads and more revenue. But why would you add more shows if people are watching less television news?
That's exactly what it is. It's to capitalize on an audience that you're not already getting. 1, to beat out your competitors. 2, to get the numbers so that you could sell advertising at a higher dollar figure and make more money. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a business. You got to make money. And so, there were talks, where I used to work, a lot of talk about what time it should be added, and it was in a time that there were no other newscasts, so we could say we're the only newscast at this time, and that's how they were going to brand it.
Yeah.
And that's how they were going to sell it too. And so that, it's strategic because it's a business. You got to make money somehow. So they're adding newscasts, but they've again eliminated the broadcast staffing. So it's like skeleton
stretching
crews.
yourself thin, and now they have, okay, now you're just a digital reporter, so now you're just dedicated to the web, but we actually need you to go on TV too. Oh, can you be live at 7? And before you know it, you're just doing the role of and you don't have a photographer, so you're gonna have to shoot all of your own stuff. And it really does. You're just so stretched thin. At the end of the day, you have nothing left inside of you.
You do. You pick up the role of this is not an exaggeration, about 5 people's jobs.
Absolutely.
Wow.
In one day, and you do that every day, and you're under a tight deadline. You're already stressed, and it's not just with Aimee, who was a reporter, but as for producers behind the scenes, and even as a news manager, I was filling in producing, I was writing stuff for the websites, and I was supposed to just oversee the operation, and I was totally in the weeds, filling in gaps. I was the go-to person of, oh, we need this, we're adding this, can you do this? Yeah. Or maybe this person's sick, can you do this and this and this? Oh, on top of your manager job.
Yeah, and talk about fake news and the room for error. It's bound to happen. And I feel like when you see the newsroom in Hollywood and on movies and TV shows, there's like 5 producers, and a reporter always has a photographer, and then there's someone else, driving the van. It's, you walk into a newsroom on a Sunday evening and there's like 2 producers, but you have 5 shows, 3 reporters, and everyone's just,
How are we going to do this?
How are we going to do this?
But, okay, so here's something, though, all right? Like, once you're faced with a task like that, and you rise to the motherfucking occasion, right? Like, there's a certain feeling that you get knowing that, like, okay, this was damn near impossible, but I just did that. So even though it's a lot of stress, it also kind of solidifies, like, a part of foundation-wise, like, who you are as an individual. Yeah. Are you somebody who cracks when things get tough? Or are you going to be somebody that solidifies and bunkers down and gets the job done?
And delivers.
So, like, even though it's a lot, but I also love those kind of tests of internal strength, because when you're, like, putting your back's in the corner, like, and you grind it out and fucking work hard and make it all happen, and it seems seamless to people that are watching.
Yeah.
Like, there's a satisfaction that comes with that type of work ethic that anybody who's just sitting on the couch watching the news constantly, they probably don't feel that type of work ethic, So I had to put in that silver lining there.
Yeah, and you are so correct. And it goes back to what I was talking about in the beginning was when I was really thinking about leaving TV news, I was talking to a photographer in the live truck, and I said to him, I really want to leave, but I'm struggling with the idea. And he said, it's because you are addicted to the chaos. And when you do finish a day where there's no one, there's no staff, there's no one to help you, and you barely made deadline, and you barely got your hair done for that live shot, the feeling of, I did it, is incredible. It's not healthy, but it's incredible, when you actually do pull it off.
Yeah, and producers who get to sit in a control room. I always say, like, the airtime, like when the actual show goes to TV, that's the easiest time for a producer, because your work is done and now you get to watch it come to life on screen for hundreds of thousands of people. And so it's rewarding when you get to say, I created that and it looked cool and I made an impact. And then you have the nights where you thought you did the best job and you get the email at the end of the night from your boss saying, well, why did you do this? And what about that? And this and that. And it breaks down and where was the technical error? And who filmed that? And why was it edited that? Why did you write that? And then there's lists.
Yeah.
And those happen, I think, more often than the kudos remarks of good work, that newscast looked great. And that's the hard part. So you feel like you're on this high, like, oh yeah, that was cool to see all my work, go on to TV, and then it's crushed within minutes.
Yeah. Alli, can I ask you, why did you leave television?
Oh, that's a good question. I struggled for a year deciding whether or not to leave. I mean, I said sick addiction, but it's really true. Like, this was my dream. This is not, I found out my passion in high school. I went to college for this. I feel like I did it. I climbed the ladder in a newsroom. I was a news manager. This was my dream.
Yeah.
And so it took me a year to, I went back and forth. But at the end of the day, I was getting married and I could not be on all the time because of my mental health, knowing that I was getting married. So for my marriage, this is not a business where you could have children. I mean, the people who do this and have kids, they are unbelievable. Yeah, it's really hard to do. But also, I didn't really like the direction the industry was going. At the end of the day, I didn't align with decisions being made. I didn't align with conversations behind the scenes. And it was hard to say goodbye, but now that I've been out, I'm a whole new human. I mean, healthier mentally and physically even, and it was a really, really hard decision. And of course, I'm still, there was a sinkhole on a street and I was like taking pictures of the sinkhole and, sending it to all the reporters like, oh, you shouldn't, there's still the news part in me.
It'll never go away.
It'll never disappear, but it's just something I had to do for my family.
And your mental health, right?
Agreed.
That's good.
And a lot of people have left, especially with COVID, because of mental health. Because, with COVID, we had the political climate, and then with COVID, we were consumed in that, 10, 12, 14 hours a day in the newsroom at the early start of it.
It was
and
nonstop fear-mongering. Mm-hmm. That's how I feel about all that.
It's
100%.
Well, we had to let you know there was no toilet paper, Arthur.
Yes.
We really needed
I honestly had a thing one day where I was like, oh my God, if I don't go get toilet paper right now, like, my ass is out of luck, literally.
Yeah, and I was working in the grocery business at the time, like when the pandemic started. I come from the grocery background, and I saw it happen in live action. I saw the human behaviors of the panic, and people literally...
It's TV gold.
It's TV gold.
Do you remember Denver's 2-hour prohibition?
No, I was in Pennsylvania reporting at the time. So.
They were going to close all the liquor stores, and everyone
swarms
of people flocked to the liquor stores. Like, I need to get my liquor before they shut down.
And
the pot shops,
and marijuana,
yes.
And the marijuana shops.
Man, that was...
People lost their mind. The lines were wrapped around the block 7 times.
Yeah.
People were lining up. I got to get my booze, got to get my
I
pot.
spent like $250 on booze on that night. When I thought it was going to get locked down, it was like, it's time to buckle up.
We all didn't know what was going to happen. I think that's the reality of it. I've talked a lot about pandemic on the air, of course, but at the beginning, we shut the podcast down. We took our precautionary measures. We didn't know. No, I don't think anybody really knew it was going to happen, but the way we reacted as a society, I'm going to go ahead and give that a solid F. I just really feel like we failed as a society in how we reacted and to this whole thing.
Yeah.
I really do. And from the reporting standpoint, from the way people acted, there was just so much information coming at us, we didn't know what to believe. Mm-hmm. I think that's the big thing. We know this thing was real, of course. I'm not saying that. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. Mm-hmm. But I think it was a little bit blown out of proportion.
Yeah.
That's my position.
We didn't know what to do either. We're just reporting on normal things, and we got an email from our news producer one day saying, hey, maybe we should actually, really focus on this. And we're thinking, come on. And then in the matter of a week, it was... all we talked about, that was
100% news.
Yeah, well, I remember the one night that I was in the newsroom, and it was when the NBA like mid-game,
Oh,
shut down.
yeah.
I remember
That
we
was
were.
the night where I was
Yes.
like, okay.
That's when you knew.
This could be trouble.
Yeah.
But, you know, at the same time, as a newsroom, as producers, as reporters, as journalists, we're getting the information, and it's up to us to decide
Yeah.
what gets disseminated
That
to
was
the
quite the
public.
responsibility.
And
It's a big responsibility.
we don't
Yeah.
know what this is or how it's going to affect people, or, you know, so it's us pinpointing little things that we think the public should know, and then it just built and built and built and built, and then it was information overload, because we're like, well, we should just get it all out there and let people decide what's important for their lives
Yeah.
and how it impacts them. And
Agree with
so
that.
that's where the
Yeah.
chaos came from. Was
Yep.
I guess that was like the time for news to shine, of like, let's inform the public of something really serious.
That
But
really
it
was our time, yeah.
yeah.
It's wild.
Yeah.
I mean, what's to live through this, right? Like, and all of us have lived through 9/11. Like, we were all alive when that happened. I mean, every generation has like these big things that we have to overcome. So what I'm going to tell the people out there is to stay solidified, like within your self-thought to a certain extent, because if you're only listening to outside influences and like just letting it bombard you, and then you start repeating it and telling people about it, like, you're not really being an individual. Look, I believe in science, but I also believe corruption in every facet of society. So, like, I'm going to trust my intuition on things more than, like, what I'm hearing other people think that I should do.
Yeah.
And I just...
It's good.
I challenge people to do that as well, because, like, the moment that you lose yourself and you stop... or maybe you don't even have, like, your own drive, mission, or, like, purpose. You know, maybe that should be the challenge of the week, is to what is your purpose? Like, what's your purpose of waking up today and doing what you do? And, you know, we're sitting across the table from two extremely talented ladies, that were both in the industry, and your purpose was not to continue to do that. And you both left, you know, a sought after position to, you know, risk it a little bit.
Yeah.
And I respect that. Because
you.
it's
Yeah.
not doing the normal thing.
No, it is not.
We
No, it is
appreciate
not.
that.
How has life been for you post news?
Life's been great. Yeah, you know, it's I always say, if you could do news, you could do anything. And I truly believe that. We're well-oiled machines.
All employers should hear that, by the way. We can do anything. Go ahead.
I really, like, you know, on paper, sure, maybe the, like, skills don't equal what a job description is, but, like, you really could do anything. And so
Yeah.
stepping outside of news was a huge adjustment for me, because I was used to going high speed, and
Yeah.
the world doesn't operate high speed. And so I had to retrain myself to step back in my new role and focus on little things that I'm like, you know, a part of me thought I was bored, and I was like, wait, I'm not bored. I'm just not used to going this slow.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing. You know,
Yeah.
I always tell people this story, because this pretty much sums up news people. I had a friend
Okay.
who was in the news business almost 10 years, left the industry, got a normal job. I always say normal. Like, it's
Right.
like a
Well,
normal
yeah,
9
that's
to
what
5,
you do, yeah.
you know, at a desk, doing
Yeah.
paperwork, whatever. And her first week on the job, her boss hands her, you know, an assignment to do. And she takes the assignment, and he doesn't say when he needs it. Just so you know, when you can you get to this? Sure. She sat for 2 hours, didn't use the restroom, didn't drink water, didn't do anything, and she got it done in 2 hours and went and handed it back to her boss, and her boss said, oh, I didn't need that for like 2 weeks. Because we're so used to, if something's
Yeah.
put on your desk, you
Yes.
do it. You stop. I don't care if you have to use the restroom, or if it's your lunch break, or you need to get water, or you have to call your spouse, or, I mean, you get it done
You
quickly.
do what you need to do to get the job done.
Yeah, so when
Yeah.
she told me that, you know, that's kind of how I was. It was
Yeah.
like, I don't have a deadline. Well, how am I going
I
to...
can
Wow.
pee?
Yeah, I mean, I can go... You know, my new boss told me, you know, why don't you go outside and take a walk? What? I never used to go see the
Yes.
sunlight
That is so
during my
healthy.
10-hour days.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's almost like a little bit militant, almost. You know, you're just like, oh, 600, let's go. Get in the
Yeah.
newsroom now. You know.
Well, it's the deadline. It's like, if you don't have it by 5, then you have
No,
failed. Like,
yeah.
there's, you know, it's not like, I'll do it tomorrow. It's,
There's no time for that.
Yeah, you have to.
High pressure. Good skill sets, though, right? I mean, obviously, all these things that y'all have learned about high pressure, deadlines, right? Being buttoned up, being detailed. I'm sure a lot of these skill sets have carried over into a lot of areas in your personal lives.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. They have. Mm-hmm. I'm never late ever, right?
No.
No.
Completely on time,
Yeah.
which is
I
fashionably
haven't
late.
been late at all. Yeah.
So, post news, as you asked Alli, obviously we know Bluebird Days, fantastic. I was driving home from the Denver Food and Wine Festival in an Uber the other day. And I was having a conversation because I like to talk with my Uber driver. And he says, pushing the podcast, hey man, check us out, all this stuff. Gave him a sticker. He's like, what do you have on this week? Well, I have, former Fox News reporter Aimee Lewis on. And he goes, wait a minute. That name sounds familiar. He goes, I think I just read an article. Wasn't that the picture of her like on a mountain with the skis? I said, Bluebird Days. I said, yeah, I produced that show. So it was just one of those like really cool moments in the city of Denver. Jumped into a lift. God, he's going to listen to this episode. I'm sorry, brother. I forgot your name. But I know
Just
you
hit us up, man. We'll show you some love.
Yeah,
It's all good.
cool.
yeah. And so that was a cool moment, obviously making some big waves in Denver with
yeah.
Westward and Bluebird Days. That's such a tremendous project, and I think it's reaching a lot of people.
Yeah. So what's the next part of this series, Aimee? Have you started writing it?
No, I'll know when I know.
Yeah.
I mean, I have an idea of what could be the next chapter. There's a part of me that just wants to keep doing ridiculous things in my life so I can write about it. Just
That's
keep doing,
the news girl in you.
Right? Like
go big or go home.
Right? What's the craziest thing I can do to write about? Yeah. I mean, yeah, Live at 5, the Bluebird Days was just the feedback was truly overwhelming, and it was just me talking about. And I thought, what a great story about a person that had so much clout and was really recognizable and had an insane job that she worked really hard for to end up serving chicken nuggets to kids at a ski resort. And people ate it up. People really did like it.
Authentic.
It was just authentic. Yeah.
Really well told story. I mean,
Thank
I'm
you.
sure, obviously, you heard it.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, and playing it back, too. I mean, it was fun to sit here and do it live action. Art and I producing it together. Super cool. But then playing it back and hearing the story, I mean, very well told. It's almost like an audiobook, I feel like. Because you said you originally wanted it to be a book. It sounds like an audiobook.
Yeah, doing an audiobook, yeah. And I feel this, almost the weight of responsibility because of the responses. And Alli, like you were truly the only person I reached out to because I knew you were local and you expressed your, interest on talking more about it. But it's like, what do I do now when I have dozens of reporters and anchors that are coming to me to tell their stories? There's a part of me that really wants to lay it all to rest and say, I'm done with news, I'm done with storytelling, I don't want to talk about it anymore. But then, on the other hand, I know that I could do something that hasn't been done before. And because local news is so hush-hush, I really am interested in maybe finding ways to allow the storytellers to tell their stories.
Yes.
So maybe in the coming weeks I'll try to find a platform for that. But I think there's just so many other jobs that people want to talk about that, I think, what was it, TSA workers just came out and tried to break their silence about how tough it is to be a TSA officer. And, maybe it doesn't stop with local news.
So maybe you go down this path of like, how is a specific industry abusing the talent that is working for them?
Right.
Something along those lines.
Yeah. Let's talk about shit jobs, maybe. Let's talk about jobs that are hard and really dive into it. But yeah, I think local news isn't the only industry that has people that are dying to talk about what they go through every day. And
it's good to recognize that.
It's good to recognize that. Yeah. So, I have a lot to think about, but I really am so grateful for everyone that took the time to reach out and to message me back and let me know that, I wasn't the only person that felt like I was in my own little solo insane asylum.
Yeah.
Well, you might have inspired a lot of people, too, to kind of come out of maybe something that they're hiding, and being like, oh, this is just how it is. Like you guys said, this is our assignment. We got to go do it.
Yeah.
And then it starts to wear on you. It started to wear on your mental health, physical health, I'm sure, not sleeping, overthinking things. Like, that's when it's time to make a reevaluation. Is this worth it? You know, no
This
matter
is
how much
worth it.
passion you have for it, right? Because
Yeah.
obviously you both got into it because you had passion for it and you loved it. But then it became a point where it was starting to affect your mental and physical health, your
And
day-to-day
your
lives.
relationships.
Family, whatever.
family.
I mean, how
Yeah.
many? I don't know how many. There were. I think I didn't go home for Christmas for
Oh, Christmas?
6 or 7 years. I mean, you miss every holiday. You miss every get together on the weekend. You miss everything.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
if nieces and nephews growing up, you blink and they're 5. Wait, what? I haven't been home in 5 years.
Wow.
Or it's
Yeah.
hard. It's life's short.
Did you have off 10 days a year as well?
We did. It was 10 days, but we don't get any sick time. So if you were sick, that's it.
I mean, 10 days a
Jeez.
year off.
So, and is that not including weekends? Like you get 10
Oh,
vacation
yes.
days.
Yes, sorry, including
Yeah.
weekends.
Because
yeah,
you work
yeah.
5 days a
Yeah.
week, so essentially
Yeah.
2 weeks a year.
2 weeks, yep.
2 weeks a
Okay.
year. And maybe that's standard, but when you don't get the opportunity to, like, work remote, you know, some days
Yeah.
I'm just going to work from the office, you know, I mean, 2 weeks, especially when you don't live at home, when you report in other areas. To me, that's just, in any industry, not enough. It's really not.
Well,
That's
you,
not-
you mentioned work remote. I really think COVID, the pandemic, shifted people's
did.
mindset of what they, like the type of employee they want to be, but who they want to work for and how they want to be treated. I mean, I was remote in the news world for a little bit during COVID, and before that, I saw my husband one night of the week.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
that's wild.
when I was remote, I mean, I was missing, he wanted,
Well, at least
missing
like the passion
things.
was alive at that point, right?
Yeah.
We did
Missing
get
all
married,
week.
so
Congratulations.
thank you.
They really missed
But-
each other.
But that was,
Yeah.
you know, for me, that was also a wake-up call, was I'm home and I'm missing out. He knew we bought this house and he knew every neighbor and he had all these stories, and here I was, I didn't know anything. I didn't know what was going on with him at work. He couldn't come
Yeah.
to me to talk to me about his hard days at work because I was always in the newsroom or busy. So
Yeah.
that was also a wake-up call for me, and I'm sure for a lot of people, of who do you want to work for and what's the
Yeah.
type of job and career path you want to take.
Yeah. I mean, it's so many layers to this onion, right? Like it's almost an onion inception to the amount of layers we could peel back from this. And it's a great conversation. However, I do want to keep the ball moving. We always ask one question to our guests. Tonight I'm going to ask it to our guests. And that is, if you could give one piece of advice to humanity to make everybody better tomorrow, what would that piece of advice be? And I'd like each of you to answer this.
Okay. Alli, you go first.
I think the biggest thing is you never know what someone's going through, and have compassion. I think that's really what I want people to take away from this is, you know, we see a lot of things in news, you know, road rage shootings and senseless acts of violence, and you really never know what is going on behind the scenes, and it just takes one little nice gesture to make someone's day. And so I really want to
Absolutely.
just spread that in
Yes.
the community. You know, Coloradans are great people, but it's good to show it here and there.
I love that. How about you,
That's
Aimee?
great. I mean, I was gonna say throw your cell phone in a fire, but my like advice. I just think that you should delete Instagram for a week and be more aware of just what's going on around you, or challenge yourself to just put the phone down. It is so easy to feel like you can just scroll through Instagram, scroll through Twitter when you're a little bit bored, standing in the line at the grocery store. But what if you actually just talk to the person in front of you, you know?
Yeah.
I think cell phones are an important part of society, but I don't think that we should be as reliant on the apps that we are. So my piece of advice would be take a week off Instagram. You don't have to delete your account, just delete the app,
Yeah.
and see how you feel at the end of it.
No,
That's good advice.
It's great advice on both ends.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about that a lot here, just the impacts of social media and putting the phones down. You know, I always challenge folks, especially if they're going to go out for a meal, you know, have a visit with some friends, keep your phone in the car,
Yeah.
whatever. I mean, our buddies had a policy, we'd all put our phones in the middle of the table when we
Yeah.
go out for, you know, appetizers, beers, what have you, and whoever grabbed their phone first would pay for the tab.
Perfect. That's great.
You know, and that so just having some fun with it like that. Yeah, it is important to get rid of the screen times. I would agree with that. We're too reliant on it. You see it all the time when you people watch, when people get uncomfortable, when there's standing in a grocery store line or whatever, the TSA line, scrolling the phone, looking at just nonsense, filling your head up with all this stuff, keep people fired up. I think that's good advice. I beat on social media enough, so
yeah. I mean, it's definitely something that everyone is susceptible to, and both points though to obviously put the phones down, but also to recognize struggle of other human beings. I really do like that because my mom taught me this lesson when I was younger, and it was to son, don't take people's opinions personally about you. They can be having a really tough day. They could be having a tough life, and they're probably projecting. That doesn't mean that you are a bad person or that you're really what they're projecting you as. But if you can remove yourself from your own current circumstances to an extent, like, okay, this guy is road raging behind me. I always like to think his wife's in labor. That's where I like to go with my mind. Like, okay, it's fine. He can honk or flip me off, like,
yeah,
whatever.
Yeah.
So two really important things there, is to be more cognizant of our fellow woman and man that's out there walking around, and let's have some more compassion. But then also let's treat ourselves better at the same time and not get sucked into this rabbit hole of social media and infinite scrolling. And it's been about 7 or 8 months now since I've challenged myself to put down my phone and not scroll social media as much. And I'm so much happier. And whenever I start looking at my phone and start scrolling, I notice the nonsense, and I'm like, this is fucking garbage. Like, this is not, it's not doing anything for me. And what I've done in those little moments is, prospect a little harder for my job, or, work on the production company a little bit more, or do 10 push-ups. Like, anything other than scrolling for those 90 seconds of meaningless information. So, two really important points there.
Yeah, and I'll echo off that too, Art, because I don't want to sound like a complete hypocrite here. I mean, obviously what we do is very much social media driven, right? I mean, I'm going to be on social media all day tomorrow promoting this episode, cutting promo clips, doing all that stuff. So I don't want to sound like the guy that is not on there, because I am.
Totally.
And I get caught into the scroll myself. I say these things to remind myself I got to do the challenge too. Of course, we get sucked into that stuff. If it wasn't for the pod, I probably wouldn't be on there. It's
a lifelong challenge. Like, you don't just quit social media and never get the temptation to get drawn back in. Like, you constantly have to work on it.
Yeah, and again, what we do, news, podcasting, like there's such a huge demand for it because you can reach so many people that way. It helps grow the business. At the end of the day, it is a business, and that aspect can get a little bit caught up with the personal side of it too. And so that's just a good reminder for myself, I feel like. So it's good to say those things out loud.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So I feel like this was a very unique and awesome episode.
Terrific.
Aimee, you're the first time that you brought a guest as being a guest on the show.
Guest of a guest?
A guest of a guest. And I do want to just acknowledge and thank both of you for being extremely open about your history and kind of motivations to where you're at now. If we can all learn to share ourselves and be vulnerable and honest and open, then we can help motivate the population. So just solid job on all that, and whatever comes next is going to be the right thing, and I guarantee that.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for spending some time with us and opening up on some things and answering my questions, because I know I had to come at you with the hot seat. So
bring it on.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and yeah, cheers to that. A great way to close out the episode.
Cheers to that.
A lot of fun.
Cheers.
We'll do it again.
DCPC.
That's right.
Let's go.
Guys, we're going to keep this train moving. We got Udemy coming on next. It's going to be fun. We're going to have, when's this come out? Does this come out the 14th?
This one will be out on the,
So we got a lot of shows dropping, guys, and we have a big announcement coming on the 19th, Monday the 19th. So
get ready.
Big things coming, guys. I got to check my calendar, make sure I know what day I'm on, because I don't know what day it is anymore. I'm sure, as you know, when you're booked, that's what happens, right? So at the same time, we got to slow down. We got to take care of ourselves a little bit. Y'all be good to yourselves. You deserve it.